Really delighted to be talking about this today. Moving on, uh, can we move on? So let's start with a small activity here. Um, so we have quite a few participants. Minta, let's stay with the first point right now. That's the first point. Can I request all the audience here to take a moment and close their eyes and just think about something that they love doing? Okay? Something that you absolutely love doing. It could be anything. Just take a pause, close your eyes, and just think about it for a minute. And in the chat box, write it down for me. Write down what you love doing. I love gardening. I love to sit in my garden and look at my flowers, and I love doing it. Nature walk, bike ride. Okay, what else? Come on, people. We are so many listening to music, love to shopping. Okay. Sketching, guitar, net surfing, singing. Wow, Aditi. Thank you. What else? Jogging, music and dancing, board games. Okay. What else? Come on, this session is for you. Think, what do you like? What do you love doing? Guiding. Okay. What else? Okay. Now we do the next part of the activity. Now think about having a conversation with someone wherein you are sharing about what you love. So you are telling somebody that I love doing this. I love gardening. I love singing and learning Carnatic music. I love jogging. When I go jogging, I am in my own world. I love playing board games. Just think about having that conversation with someone, with a friend, with a colleague, with your partner. Just think about it. A 5-minute conversation, maybe over a cup of coffee or phone. You're just having a conversation with someone. And now, come to part 3. Now that you've had that conversation in your mind, now you tell me, how do you feel? What is the emotion in your heart? When you've thought about something you love and you've thought about having a conversation about that thing, about that activity with someone, what is the emotion inside you right now? Feeling happy, fresh, pleasant, stress free. So, what did we do right now? Feeling lightheaded, positive emotions. We triggered some positive emotions, correct? With just a small activity, we triggered some positive emotions. Now, in a single day, when we are going through our day to day activities, we go through a range of emotions. Would you agree with me? Yes? So now think of a typical day when you get up in the morning. From morning till evening, you go through a lot of things. You get ready for work, you have work related calls, you have household conversations, you take care of children, you take care of managers, you take care of team members. Can you tell me in a day what all emotions do you feel? 4 or 5 different emotions that you feel in a day? Anyone? Can anybody put down what are the different range of emotions we feel in a day? Come on, people. Happy, bored, feeling low, excited. Happy, excited, sad, etc. Happy, sad, dull, excited, hungry also, yes. Happiness, anger, relaxed, anxiety. Absolutely right. Thank you so much for all those who shared. So, the fact is that on any given day, we feel a range of emotions. And just like in the previous activity, I triggered, just by a small activity, I triggered some positive emotions in you. Similarly, in a single day, there are certain things which happen which trigger a range of emotions in you. So let's understand that how do emotions get triggered? Okay. So let's see this small video and then we'll take it forward from there.
Are you in the catering business?
छोटा सा small business in house only, making snacks, laddu.
Laddu?
Laddu round.
We have an entrepreneur in the class. Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. It's a person who runs his or her own business. Sashi, you are an entrepreneur.
The video is stuck.
Yeah, sorry.
Are you in the catering
Sorry.
business? Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. It's a person who runs his or her own business. Sashi, you are an entrepreneur.
शब्द ना हुआ गजल हो गई कैसी भाषा है ये
कैसा है सब वहाँ?
हाँ, सतीश पता है मुझे यहाँ सब क्या बुलाते हैं?
हाँ, शाशी.
नहीं, entrepreneur.
Oh my God. So सबको वहाँ भी लड्डू खिलाया क्या? Entrepreneur. हेलो? हेलो?
हेलो?
मुझे लगा डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया. बोलो.
Okay, so back to the audience. What did we see here? When the protagonist is called an entrepreneur, what are the emotions which are generated in her? People, my emotional resilience is dependent on your participation. Yes. So she was feeling valued. She was feeling motivated. She was feeling proud. Right? She felt that she was happy. Yes. And there was a sense of accomplishment, right? There was something that she felt that there was something that it was her own. She was feeling accomplished. And what happened when her husband mocked her for it? When she shared it with her husband, she felt disappointed, demotivated, sad. So, for the same thing, lost, right? So she felt for the same, the fact that she was making laddus and she was being seen as an entrepreneur by someone. For the same thing, when she shared it with pride with her partner, but her partner does not see it like that. And she feels sad and disappointed and dejected and demotivated and lost. And she does not feel valued anymore. So, what we see here is a very interesting play of triggers. How can triggers evoke different emotions in us? And it is these triggers which are all around us. If we look at situations, this COVID is a situation that we are all in, and we are all responding to it in terms of the anxiety that we are having or the doubts that we are having. It is our emotional response to the situation. There are people who might be supportive. There might be people who are not supportive. There might be people who are creating a lot of noise. There are people who are not creating a lot of noise. Then the entire routine, the monotony of the situation, waking up, not being able to go out, being working from home. Earlier, we used to step out, we used to go to office, we used to come back home. On the weekends we could go out, we would socialize with friends, we could go for holidays. But now it is completely monotonous. There is social distancing, there is isolation. So the entire routine can be evoking certain emotions in us. Then there can be the opinions which can be very, very conflicting. Somebody might say that the vaccine is going to work. Somebody might say the vaccine is not going to work. Somebody might say the economy will recover. Somebody will say economy is not going to recover. It is all over the place. There is no certainty. And that might be evoking certain emotions in us. Then there are places. So, for instance, home used to be a haven. When we had a bad day at work, we would come back home and we would say that, okay, now let me chill out for a little time. Let me spend time with my family. Let me forget about work. What happened at work happened at work. But now, when the boundary of work and office is getting blurred, how do we find that safe haven anymore? And then life changes. There might be occasions which might be happening. For example, there might be weddings which might be getting postponed. There might be family members who might be getting infected, or there might be people who might be having illnesses, or who might not be able to get treatment at this time. So there might be a lot of family or life changes which might be happening. Now, the fact is that each one of us responds to each of these triggers differently. All of us don't respond to them in the same way. All our triggers are different. So, for example, I am an introvert by nature. So, for me, if I don't step out of the house for 6 months, it is not an issue. But my partner or my husband, he's an extrovert by nature. For him, if he does not step out, he gets very fidgety, right? So for each one of us, our responses to triggers are very different. And they start manifesting themselves in very different ways. So there are 4 different ways in which they manifest. So the first one is it starts to show physically. For example, it can show in terms of fatigue, in terms of not wanting to get up simply in the morning because the entire routine and the monotony is getting to me. I don't like to get up in the morning and just sit on my laptop and start work. Or I'm constantly getting headaches by the sheer stress of back to back Zoom meetings. I am just so tired of headache of webinars. right? In between there was this overload of webinars. People were saying just too many webinars, we can't handle them anymore. Then there was this entire concept of appetite change.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi, Sonika.
I,
Your voice is pretty low.
my voice is there. I have full volume here.
Yeah. Now it's clear. Now it's clear.
Okay. So, and then there are appetite changes, maybe in terms of sometimes we binge eat, or sometimes we are not hungry at all. And sometimes we oversleep, or we can't sleep at all. And then some people might be used to all these body aches. And then there are these emotional changes in terms of anxiety or nervousness. And sometimes there is complete apathy. You might find there are team members who say, how does it matter? Whatever I do, the situation is not going to change. I am still working from home. My incentives are not going to happen. Business is not looking up. So, what does it matter even if I don't work till 11 o'clock? Why? How nobody is monitoring what I am doing at home, right? There might be irritability, there might be frustration, which might show up in terms of conflict. There might be behavioral changes. For example, there might be increased aggression. There are people who show in terms of social withdrawal. They might not be wanting to speak. So, for example, in between, we realized that my mother in law, she was facing, my sister in law was expecting a child, and she was due in June, and she's in London, and my mother in law could not go to London to be with her, and because of that she went into a shell. And we didn't realize till May that she had gone withdrawn so much because she was extremely worried. And finally we got her help. We had her counseled, and we gave her some anxiety medicines, and that is how we helped her during that period. Sometimes there is inability to take decisions because our mind is so fogged. In that period we are unable to take decisions, or we magnify things so much. Oh god, there is COVID. If I step out I might get infection. If I get infection I will pass it on to my wife and children, and what will happen to my financial stability? Will I be able to provide for my children? Should I get medical insurance? Should I start saving? And we start magnifying things, right? And start going down a negative spiral, or we start putting off important decisions. So, behaviorally, we start behaving in a very different manner. And when there is so much on our heads, the mind can only take that much, right? So, our cognitive abilities also start getting impacted. We become more forgetful. We start forgetting things. I keep telling my team I'm getting Alzheimer's, because there is so many things to remember that I keep forgetting. So and then sometimes there is impaired judgment, because you are juggling so many things that you miss important cues. And when you miss important cues, you are not able to make the right judgment, and you take wrong decisions. And then you are constantly worrying, right? Because you are magnifying things, you are constantly worrying, and you lose focus. Now, it is not necessary that all of us have all of these responses. Different people have different responses. It is important to understand that what is my response. And how do we understand that? Let me explain this to you through a small real story. Okay? So let's move on, Nandita, to the story. So this is a story which happened in the month of April. In the month of April, it was full bloom lockdown, complete lockdown. And I stay in Delhi, and I have a ground floor flat, and I have a very small garden outside. And I have been in this house for about 5 years, and I don't get too much of sun in my garden, but I really love my garden. And in the last 5 years, I have invested a lot of money and effort in my garden. So I don't do gardening myself, but I have a very good Mali Bhaiya. So what I do is that in winters I will get a lot of blooming flowers, winter flowers, and we will plant them. I have a lot of perennial plants which are there throughout the year. I have a lot of plants which bloom throughout the year. So I have roses, etc., which will bloom throughout the year. But because we don't get too much of sun, we have to take very good care of them. We have to keep shifting them. We have to give a lot of fertilizers and all, manure, and we have to take a lot of care of them. So when the lockdown happened in March and the gardeners stopped coming, I took charge of it. And just to give you context, I have more than 200 pots and I have a small patch of grass as well. So I started giving it water and I started doing a little weeding. I said, whatever little I can do so that I can maintain it, keep it hygienic, and keep it, at least, watered and everything. So, whatever little knowledge I have, I'll keep doing that. So, and I have a habit that every morning, in the morning, first thing that I do is take my cup of coffee and go and sit in my garden. And I sit there for almost an hour. That is my rejuvenation. As I have shared earlier, I'm an introvert. So, that is my way of recharging my batteries. So, one Sunday morning, we slept till late, till about 9 o'clock. And that day, some monkeys decided to visit my garden. And while we slept, the monkeys decided to have a picnic. And they broke some 35 pots. They literally uprooted about 30 plants. And some of those plants are, like birds of paradise. It takes about 5 to 8 years to bloom. It does not bloom immediately. It has to be really, matlab, from the time you buy the plant to it matures, it takes that much of time. So some of those plants were like that. Now, when I took at 9:30, I took my cup of coffee and I stepped out. Instead of the peace and the calm and the love that I feel when I step into my garden, I was I was swept by feelings of rage and anger and frustration. I mean, the you should have seen the mayhem, pots broken, plants uprooted from their roots and strewn all over the place. It looked like a shipwreck. It was killing me, and I just slammed the door shut and I came back inside. As I walked back in, I see my 12-year-old son. He was playing PlayStation, and looking at him, I felt a thunderous rage and I screamed at him, on a Sunday morning, don't you have anything better to do? And my husband was sitting there and he looked at me with raised eyebrows. And I looked at him and I said, don't you give me that look. Don't you have anything better to do? Don't you have to get him to do homework or study for his Olympiad or something? So he also got it from me. And then I went to my favorite sofa and I plonked myself on it and sat there brooding in anger. And as I sat there brooding, really, it was, the negative spiral, it was really pulling me down. And it was like, what do I do? 5 years of hard work gone down the drain. You know, I was feeling really sad. I was almost in tears. You can imagine the love that I have for my garden. And as I was thinking about it, this one statement hit me hard. 5 years of effort and love gone down the drain. And then I asked myself, am I so helpless that I will let a bunch of rogue monkeys let the work of 5 years go down the drain? Am I that helpless? Am I that useless? Will I really let that happen? So, what can I do? What can I do? So, in that moment, I said, okay, so let me call Mali Bhaiya. So, I called Mali Bhaiya. So, Mali Bhaiya said, ma'am, take me on a WhatsApp video call and show me. So, I took him on a WhatsApp video call. So, he said that, ma'am, when I look at the plants, to me, it seems that only the pots are broken. The plants seem to be uprooted from the root. So 90% of the plants can be repotted as far as I can see. So I suggest that we have some extra pots. The rest, there is a nursery right outside the colony. Why don't you send the driver and ask for the new pots? Ask them to send it with the right soil, which he told me also what kind of soil. And why don't you just repot the plants? I said, okay, but why don't you tell me which pots to be kept in the sun and which pots to be kept in the shade and how much water to give? Because I had no knowledge. Honestly, I'm very good at outsourcing, but very bad at doing work myself. So he said, okay. So he explained. So he, typed it out. He asked his son to type it out and send it to me. So I got all the knowledge and information. Now came the big question that 35 pots is a lot of hard labor. Can I do it all alone? Now I can't do it all alone. So now I had to swallow some of the hard words that I had spoken in the morning to some of the people that I had spoken to in the morning and cajole them to be my allies. So I went back in and I made my team. So I called my son and I called my husband. I called my driver and I said, I know it is a Sunday. I know you have to go to church, but please, from church, can you go to the nursery, get these pots with this soil? Emergency hai. Okay, you will get overtime. So all of that happened. I even enrolled my 7-year-old daughter. So we made the team, we divided the tasks. So my little daughter, she had a very simple task. My little daughter just had to pick up the plants and get it to all of us. My husband had the most difficult task, which was the potting, and my son had the easier task of giving water. So that ways, it within, I think once the pots came, within 35-40 minutes, we had the entire garden in ship shape. And what started out as a very, very negative activity or a very negative incident, which was evoking a lot of frustration and despair, turned out to be a very, very happy family time. In fact, over a period of time, what used to be Mama's garden became our garden. It also became competition. This is my plant. This one I had potted, so now it is growing so well. It is my plant. It is my pot. So now my husband says, this is my pot. I planted it. I said, excuse me, they are all my pots. But no, now it is his pot. So now I have to somehow, tolerate the fact that some of them are his pots. But anyways, you give some, you gain some. So now, as you know, some days later, I was again sitting in that garden, little heaven of mine, and I was reflecting on it. What really happened? What were the inferences? What did I learn from it? And then I realized that it is a beautiful story of emerging from despair, and it is a beautiful story of resilience that we can all learn from at a personal level, at a professional level. So let me tell you how. What happened that day was something which was completely out of my control. It was a moment of adversity, what we call as A in ABC model. It was an event or a trigger which I could not control. I cannot control monkeys coming to my garden. It's an open area. I cannot control COVID from happening. I cannot control clients canceling events in the month of March and April because COVID struck, which is what happened to us. For many of you who do not know Marching Sheep, we do a lot of work in the space of diversity and inclusion. So March and April contribute to about 20% of our annual revenues because 8th of March is Women's Day. So we have a lot of interventions around that in March and April. So when COVID struck, all companies postponed programs, saying that when lockdown gets over, we will do it. But as we know, lockdown never got over. So all our programs got over. But that was an event or a trigger which I could not control. Do you agree? Just like the monkeys coming to my garden. Then is the individual's interpretation of the event. Now, what was my interpretation of the monkey event? My initial interpretation was anger, rage, shouting at my husband, shouting on my child. My initial interpretation on when my clients cancelled, could I do that to my clients? They were in the same boat as I was. The entire business community was in the same boat. Nobody knew what was happening. How long will it last? So, how do we interpret that situation? So, then comes B. How do we change our interpretation of the situation? That is where our beliefs come in and our behavior comes in. So, if you look at my belief in the monkey situation, my belief that I cannot let my hard work and love of 5 years go down the drain. That led to my change in behavior from sitting and brooding on the sofa to calling the gardener and taking action. Similarly, when clients started to cancel and postpone, me and my team realized that whatever we were doing till now is not going to work in a situation like COVID. We will have to revamp our portfolio. We will have to adapt to what clients will need in the current times to help with business continuity and business recovery. It is only when we deliver relevant programs for them, only then will they be willing to pay or willing to engage us. At this time, we have to work along with the clients to help them find out what is it they need. So we will need to do more research. We will need to do more panel discussions. We will need to do more fact finding. So that is where our behavior changed. In the monkey story, when my behavior changed, the consequence changed. The consequence could have been if I had continued to sit on brooding on my sofa, all those 35 plants would have died. But by changing my behavior, I salvaged my 35 plants. Plus, I changed the attitude of my family towards the garden. And today my garden is thriving. By changing our attitude towards how I want to approach the COVID situation for Marching Sheep, by revamping the portfolio, we were able to have business continuity for Marching Sheep by introducing modules on psychological safety, new policies during the COVID era, how to have emotional resilience, what kind of feedback mechanisms do we want, what kind of incentive programs do we want. That is what organizations needed. How do we continue to build a resilient culture during COVID times? Those were the kind of programs clients needed during COVID times. So when we engaged with clients and we worked closely with clients, we gave them long credit periods, and we had told them that we are with you in this. We have to come out with this together. We created a position, a partnership of trust. That is how we were able to build business continuity for Marching Sheep and credibility, and had a very different consequence. Had we continued with the same business model that we had before COVID, we would not have survived. Right? So, this ABC model is a model of resilience, whether you apply it on an individual or you apply it on an organization. So, the first one is that adversity is not in our control, but our response to the adversity, our belief towards it is in our control. How do we do this? We question our belief. Do we want to let the adversity take control, or do we take control of our behaviors? And what consequences do we want? Are you with me so far? Am I making sense, or have I lost you all? Can I see some yeses, nos? Okay. So now we will see one more interesting model, which is called the axis of emotions. Okay. Now, your emotions, when we, started the session, how long do we have? We have time. Good. So our emotions, when at the beginning of the session asked you, what are the range of emotions that you feel in a day? Typically our emotions are on a continuum. If you see, they can be from negative to positive. We can be extremely happy, encouraged, positive. We can be enthusiastic, joyous, excited, motivated, or we can be slightly anxious. We can be a little demotivated, a little apprehensive, or we can be extremely angry, extremely agitated. So it's along a continuum. Okay. On the y-axis, there is the intensity. Sometimes we don't demonstrate our emotion at all. So it's completely passive. It's inside, but I don't demonstrate it. And sometimes it's extremely demonstrative. So I'm dancing with joy. Or sometimes I'm happy, but I'm just keeping it inside. Or sometimes I'm thundering like a raging bull. Or sometimes I'm angry, but I'm not showing it. But so it's either active or passive, which gives us 4 quadrants. Okay. So when the monkey story happened, I was in the red quadrant. I was raging like a thundering bull, right? But I did not want to be there. It was not a good place to be in. Not only was I there, I was taking my anger out on everybody else also around me. And then, as I sat brooding on my sofa, I went to the blue one. It was the anger was still inside me. I stopped showing it, but it was still negative, but passive. But then, when I started asking myself, can I let all the 5 years of love and effort go down the drain? I started to calm down. I became more positive. I became more compassionate. I became more accepting that I have to do something. I started looking for solutions. That is where I became positive passive. And then when I started taking action, I became positive active. And when I got the team together, when I say team, basically my husband and children, and started putting the plants together, and we started having fun together, there was joy, there was happiness, there was excitement. We were throwing mitti on each other, we were throwing water on each other, and there was a lot of fun. There was competition, right? So there was fun, there was happiness, there was a sense of accomplishment, that go monkeys go, we are better than you, right? So that even, like small things, there was a small, I mean, it was not small, it was a big sense of accomplishment, but it was there, right? So it was positive active. Now in every situation, you would find yourself in one quadrant or the other. If you want to be emotionally resilient, your effort should be that if you are not in the yellow quadrant, you need to reach the yellow quadrant. So if you are in red, how to reach yellow quadrant? If you are in blue, how to reach the yellow quadrant? If you are in green, okay, you are happy in green, no problem. But okay, can I go to the yellow quadrant? Because yellow quadrant energizes us. That is how we energize. We stay happy. Okay. Now, if I look at everything that we've done in Marching Sheep, months of April and May, we had no revenue, zero revenue. And as I was telling Peter that we started doing, the team brainstormed and we said, what do we do? So we said that we will not let, just like with the monkeys, 5 years of hard work gone down the drain. No, 7 years. Marching Sheep is 7 years old. We will not let hard work of 7 years down the drain. So what we will do, we will completely revamp the portfolio and we will give clients what they need. So we started interviewing HR heads and CEOs. We started doing a lot of research through pulse surveys. We started doing panel discussions. We said, if we can't make revenue, let's at least do research. Let's at least start making new content. Let us develop ourselves. Let us learn how to do sessions online, how to do facilitation online, because we had never done facilitation online. We used to do facilitation in classroom. Who used to do facilitation online, right? So let's do that. Let's take courses. Let's upgrade ourselves. So we started doing all of that. And as we started doing all of that, we were never in red, because we understood that companies are not canceling programs because they want to. They are canceling programs because everybody is in the same situation. But we were somewhere in negative passive. And we pushed ourselves by doing all this into positive passive. And as we started doing these activities, we were so busy learning new things, making new content, speaking to HR heads and CEOs, doing new work, that we were in positive active. So even though we were not making revenue in the month of April and May, we were still very busy. So everybody used to say, you are not making any revenue in my family. You are not making any revenue. What are you so busy with? He said, you won't understand, but we are very busy. We are still working till 9 o'clock at night. And then slowly, June, revenue started pouring in. July, revenue increased. August, revenue increased further. And then people stopped questioning me. Okay, please work. It's good you're working. Work harder. I said, now I'm not working that much. All the hard work that needed to be done was done at that time. Right? So that is how you navigate. So this example I have given you from an organizational perspective. But how do you do it at an individual level? For that, you need to understand Move on, Nandita. Move on. I've already covered this in this thing. Circle of control also we've covered. What we need to understand is the interplay between emotions, thoughts, and behavior. Even scientists still now don't know what comes first. Do thoughts come first or feelings come first? Can anybody tell me what comes first? Do thoughts come first or feelings come first? Thought? And therefore, we need to work on our thoughts. Whenever a trigger happens, the first thing, when you all, when I see an empty chat box, the first thought which comes to my mind is people are not enjoying the session. Okay? And then the feeling which comes is of dejection. Okay? Then when I see a full chat box, I think they are enjoying the session. Somebody raised a hand. Would you like to put your question in Q&A, please? 419445. Somebody raised a hand, Peter.
So we just unmute that person so that the person can say. He will have to unmute himself to speak, or either type it in the chat box.
Okay. We'll wait for the person to type. Right? So what happens is that it is our thoughts. Whenever a trigger happens, there is some thought which comes in. And that thought further leads to the emotion. So if we can school our thoughts and question our thoughts and control our thoughts, we can control our emotions and thereby drive emotional resilience. This is the basis of a technique which is called CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. Right now, we are doing a 1 hour webinar. That is why I am not going into the details of CBT. The 4 hour facilitated session that we do for companies, in that we do a full CBT session, a practice session for participants. So, in that we teach people how to apply CBT to navigate the 4 quadrants. Here, I'm just going to give you a quick flavor on how to do it. So, can we go to the next slide, Nandita? So, when you look at the 4 quadrants, there are certain questions you can ask yourself. So, if you find yourself in the red quadrant, the first thing that we do is we ask, what am I feeling? So, for example, I am feeling anger. So, you label the emotion. When I label an emotion and I write it down, my mind recognizes it. And then I say, okay, why am I feeling it? What was the trigger? I am feeling angry because my children have a tendency to walk into the room even if I am in a meeting. But they don't walk into the room if my husband has a meeting. So they don't respect my career or my work as much as they respect his. So that is my issue. Can I control the trigger? The trigger is children walking into the room. And the second is that they don't respect my work as much as they respect his work. That is a bigger trigger. And I don't want to continue feeling like this. And my thought is what? My thought is that they don't respect my work. That is, that is a bigger issue. They don't respect my work as much as they respect his work. So then I come to the second one, the blue box. Okay, now that I have identified the problem statement, I come to the second box. Now that my anger has calmed down after giving them one or two slaps, now I have calmed down. Now I say, am I justified in my thoughts? Do they respect my work or not? Now I collect evidence. When I think about it, my son is really happy. He has boasted about the fact that I have come in magazines. My son has boasted about the fact that, I have come in a newspaper. All that is fine. What is the issue is that they might be slightly more scared of walking into my husband's room than mine. The second issue is that uh, possibly my room is more accessible than his. Thirdly, what are the options in front of me? The options in front of me is to sit them down and tell them that some timings are sacrosanct and lock the door like I did before this session. Right? So it's really not about them not respecting. So maybe my thoughts are not correct. So maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, which is a cognitive error. Okay. So my thoughts are wrong here. I am really not correct in saying that they don't respect my work. It is just a habit which I have to break their habit. And for that, the option is to sit and explain to them that they can't walk in when I'm having a call with a client or I'm having a session because it looks unprofessional. They are old enough to understand that. They also have Zoom classes and lock my door in future. So these are the options in front of me. Then it comes to what can I do differently for better outcomes. So now that I have these three options in front of me, can I speak to someone for advice? I can rope in my husband. Can I look for some other solution? I can also send them to their grandmother's place for a few days. Can I collaborate with my mother-in-law? What will make me feel good? Actually, what will make me feel good if their school opens and they're completely out of my hair? So, sometimes, things like this. And then prepare to take action. So make an action plan. Then I will speak to my husband, speak to my mother-in-law, speak to my children, collaborate, plan meticulously, and make milestones. Tell them that next week you will not enter. If you enter, this is how you will get penalized. Your iPad will be taken away. Your PlayStation time will get cut off. Carrot and stick. If you do not enter, then your PlayStation time will get extended by 1 hour. So, carrot and stick. And celebrate little wins, be happy. So, this is how we work on this. Move on, Nandita. And if we do it in a step by step manner, uh, identify the trigger and the emotion and identify the quadrant you are in. Then you ask yourself those questions, identify the interplay between the thought and the feeling, inquire and investigate, navigate the four quadrants, and build emotional resilience. That is all we have to do. So the tools are very simple. ABC, adversity you can't control. What you can control is your own interpretation, your own behavior and beliefs Keep an eye on what consequence you want. Out of the 4 quadrants, be focus on being in quadrant yellow. And for that, I have given you the tools that you have to, the kind of questions you can ask yourself, the interplay between thoughts and emotions. CBT is a very strong tool. It requires 2-3 hours of practice, which could not be covered during a 1 hour webinar, but it's extremely powerful. This is a six-stage process, which you can, it's getting recorded and it will be made available to all of you. And it's very, very easy to implement. So as far as I think the session goes, that's it. We have a YouTube channel. Marching Sheep has a YouTube channel. Nandita will put the link to it in the chat. There is a panel discussion that we had on emotional resilience with some CHROs. Would request you all to please view it. There were some very good suggestions and best practices that were shared by the CHROs in that one. So Nandita, you can put it over there. And please subscribe to the channel, and you can see a lot of other recordings and panel discussions. And now I'm open for Q&A. Anybody who has any questions?
Sonika, we had one question from Aditi. Ma'am, would diverting the mind help? I believe this was during that time when you talked about the quadrants. You will have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So I personally believe that diverting the mind is a short-term fix. For me, um, sorry. For me, okay, let me give you an analogy. When we have a headache, we take a pill. Okay, we might take a crocin or a disprin, and for a short period of time, the headache will go away. But we might be having some root cause because of which we are having a headache. Okay, so the headache might be happening because I have a tooth decay, because of which the headache is happening, or I have a cervical problem, or maybe because I have possibly I have diabetes, or I have some other ailment because of which I'm having a headache. Until and unless I take care of the root cause, my headache will keep coming back. Now, stress, anxiety, or any kind of emotional turmoil, until and unless we deal with the root cause, it will keep on coming back. So, diverting your mind, it will help you symptomatically for a short period of time, but might not help you in the long term. So, a lot of people, a lot of organizations conduct, and nothing against them, they conduct short term interventions, saying yoga sessions or XYZ sessions. Those are only short term fixes. These only work if you make them part of your lifestyle. It works only if you are doing meditation as part of your lifestyle. You are meditating every day and calming your mind every day. You are doing yoga and de stressing every day. Right? So, for example, some people would come back and go out and party with friends and momentarily might forget about something which happened at office, something stressful at office. But the next day, when the party is over, that thing comes back. You have to deal with that problem. You have to address it. So it is more critical to address with the root issue rather than to divert it. There is another question, it seems. what influences emotional what are the high quotient and emotions? So Vanita, I don't believe that emotional resilience is you're most welcome, Aditi. Vanita, I believe that I don't think emotional resilience is I think emotional resilience can be learnt with practice. When you keep doing something, it's like a muscle. Okay. So I don't know how many of you have learnt driving from a car driving school. I have. Okay. So, when they teach you car driving, they teach you ABC: accelerator, brake, clutch. And they teach you that, how to change gears. That when you cross 10 kilometers per hour, then you have to change from gear 1 to gear 2. When you cross 20 kilometers from hour, from gear 2 to gear 3, and so on. And initially, you are actually looking at the speedometer when you are changing gears. Once you have driven about 100, 200 kilometers, then you stop looking at the speedometer. And after about 1,000 kilometers, once you've driven 1,000 kilometers, it becomes more intuitive. And once you've been driving for about 6, 8 months, you are not even thinking about the speedometer. It becomes like the back of a hand. So people say that when you do something for the first time, or when you do any activity for that matter, there are certain connections which happen between the brain cells. And when you do something for the first time, there is a neuron connection which happens, which is thinner than the thickness of the strand of your hair. When you keep on doing something again and again and again, the neuron connection thickens. So when you wake up in the morning and go to brush your teeth, the neuron connection is thicker than the thickness of your wrist. Similarly, we as human beings, when we overcome situations, difficult situations, challenging situations, we become emotionally resilient, right? So I don't think it is about, what characteristics of a person with high quotient of emotional resilience. It's actually about um, what do we demonstrate in a situation. I think last 8 months, all of us have demonstrated resilience. There would have been times when we would have erupted. Each one of us would have erupted in different ways. Some would have shown it, some would not have shown it. Some would have shown it with their loved ones, some would have shown it at work. But, uh, you know, end of the day, we are surviving this. We are going through this together. Also, resilience builds over time. Resilience has various ways. So there are there are people who go through huge traumas, right? Loss of a loved one, or bereavement in a family. So there are those traumas and they overcome that. So I think each one of us comes with our own threshold of resilience and our own ways, our own coping mechanisms. How we cope is our own characteristic. So it would be very difficult to say that what is one specific characteristic. We have to find our own ways, coping mechanisms. And each one of us has different mechanisms.
So we have one more question from Tushar.
Yeah.
How our emotion influences our decision making process?
Good one. Ideally, emotions should not influence decision making process. Decisions should be made on the basis of data and evidence. Having said that, they should have empathy. and sensitivity. So, to give you an example, um, in during COVID, a lot of organizations have seen layoffs and furloughs. Rightly or wrongly, I am not in a position to say. But I would say that I will take example of two organizations, and I don't mean to demean any organization, but I will just say this as a third party observer. So Airbnb let go of a lot of organization, a lot of their staff, but they did it with a lot of empathy and sensitivity and respect. And they gave a lot of support to the people they were letting go of. And they ended up building a lot of employer brand for themselves, even when they were letting go of a lot of people. Uber, on the other hand, did the same activity in a very unempathetic manner, and they received a lot of social media wrath in that aspect. Now, I am sure both the organizations would have used data and their own logic to arrive at the decision that they did. But the way they implemented the decision lacked emotion, Uber. Whereas Airbnb implementation was done with a lot of empathy and sensitivity. Now, when it comes to any people decision, uh, we of course have to be very sensitive and empathetic and high emotional quotient. Having said that, it is very important to be impartial and data centric when it comes to whether it is selection, retention, performance appraisal, or any kind of people decision. But the delivery of that decision needs to have empathy and sensitivity. Have I answered your question, Tushar? It's Sonika, Tushar.
Okay. So before we conclude with our today's session,
Hmm.
one advice, there is a question that has come up. Advice for middle level HR professionals: how should they balance their team and superiors?
Business superiors or HR superiors?
Business superiors.
Okay. Um, and when it comes to teams, I'm assuming they are saying how do we balance employees and business?
Employees in business. True.
Okay. Yeah. So that's a very interesting question and a very difficult one again. See, it will have to, really depend on the culture of the organization. Um, Interestingly, we are doing this strategic HRBP certification as we speak. So we are dealing with this very question these days with a group of HR professionals. So, what really happens is that businesses are, end of the day, a profit making entity.
True.
And every business is here to make money. But businesses make money through people. And unfortunately, in the quest to make money, sometimes they lose sight of the fact that uh, if we don't take care of our people in the short term, we might end up taking certain decisions which will harm us in the long run. And the example that I gave of Uber is a very pertinent example wherein they took a decision which impacted their organizational brand very, very negatively. Now, these are certain examples. And on the other hand, Airbnb is an example where they have again taken a similar call but enhanced their organizational brand. Now, HR today stands poised in a very unique situation where they can be be the voice of reason with business, and actually call out the implications of any decision, saying that what can be the long term implications of a decision being taken today. In one of the panel discussions, which was in which Yuvraj Srivastav from Go MMT was one of the, and that video is also there on our YouTube channel. I think it was the third panel discussion. So in one of them, Yuvraj said that, how do you solve today's problems without compromising for tomorrow? That was one. And he said that, sometimes we take short termist decisions without realizing that 6 months later, when business situation improves, we will again be in a situation of hiring, and then we will again be retraining all those new people. Can we not come up with an innovative solution like furloughs or pay cuts or freezing of incentives or something else, wherein we cost optimize also for now when we are not making any money, you know, and also do not compromise on future business continuity. And that is where HR has to look for innovative methods of balancing people with business benefits and influence business. That is where the issue is that business will listen to HR when we go to them with numbers. We just can't talk emotion. We have to go to them and say that, listen, I've done the maths. This is the maths. If we do this now, this will come back to bite us 6 months later or 1 year later. Why don't we not take this call now? We understand we have budgetary constraints now. So let's take a midway path. So, this midway path, this is the maths, but at least 1 year later, we are secure. And by doing this, we are also protecting our brand reputation. Why do you think a lot of companies, Zomato has recently launched period leaves. Diageo is focusing on DNI. It has given 26 weeks of paternity leave. Why are they doing all this during the pandemic? Right? So there must be some thought which has gone behind all this. On one side, companies are looking at uh, uh, freezing increments, freezing incentives, but they are giving some leeway through policies, leaves, etc. So there has to be a balanced approach.